What are the trends that you're seeing with products and services and companies that are collecting, distributing, and creating data?
I think what probably people aren't talking about, which I hope we'll talk about at Web 2, but if we don't, then we'll talk about it the next one, is that all the internet startups and all the big platform companies, all of which will be at Web 2, are clearly capitalizing on all of the data that's being created by consumers and their interaction with services. But what may be missed is that all the really large companies that are not internet companies are doing the same thing. So it's the reason that we have the CMO of Coke, for example, coming. It's the reason that I've got the CEO of Interpublic coming. That really large brands that are not seen as internet companies at all are in fact internet companies. And those that realize that sooner rather than later and that leverage data to have conversations with customers at scale will win.
Do you think that this is the crescendo of this data conversation, or have we just begun?
We have only just begun. There's only going to be more data. I think as a culture, we're sort of catching up with the technology. We don't understand the trails of data that we leave in our wake, and I think that there's policy issues, there's privacy issues, there's many, many things that we as a society and as a technical community have to be sensitive to and acclimate to and learn together how to bridge.
If this is a baseball game, we're in the first inning of this, by every measure. And without exaggeration, I think the reality is, if you think about where this is going, we are in the business now of analytics all the time. We just launched a website called allanalytics.com to serve a portion of this marketplace because we're awash in data. We've had data for a long time, but now everything is digitally tagged, which means bi-directional data. Meaning by that is we can analyze that data, but we can also now communicate back and forth. These are people on the other end of these data elements.
I mean, I think the crescendo of conversation about data is probably in this room rather than elsewhere in the world.
That's true.
So there's probably room to grow.
I think we've had an ongoing conversation about data. I think it's just becoming now with things like LBS services, location-based technologies. I think the data is all of a sudden more actionable.
John listed out a number of data buckets when he theorizes around the data frame: purchase, search, social, location, content. What else is missing?
What's missing is that your sort of point of view as a consumer changes through all those different things. So I think if you took my credit card data and matched it with my search data, they might pass in the night, but you could draw two different conclusions from it. And I'm not sure we're completely there yet. I think we've got a lot of buckets, but we need a pool. You can't swim in a bucket.
In some ways I see entertainment, right, and gaming and the rest as sort of being the water that all these islands sit on, right? Because the reality is a lot of people, they don't care about LinkedIn, they don't care about this, they don't care about that, except for when they're being professional and, all buttoned up. But they really care about being entertained on a daily basis, right? And so in some ways that's the fundament that we build a lot of our technology on. And then we use that technology for other things that are just really exciting too.
Anything having to do with location and anything local is incredibly valuable. And it's not just data, because data implies that you're only reading it, that you're consuming data. But most of the APIs we see, the good ones, both consume and also write back. It's data and it's logic. So there are a lot of these things where you send data and you get it back in a different form. That's incredibly important. It's not just about consuming data and reading data.
What is a recent headline that you've seen in the news about data? I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like every headline I've seen in the news recently has been about data. Just today with Google+, a lot of the interesting discussion has been what is Google going to do with this incredible data set, which they've never had before, and I think that's pretty interesting.
Well, the folks at Twitter pass 200 million tweets a day, which is incredible volume. Just think about all of humanity surging through that system every day.
Zynga's announcement of their IPO, a lot of people think Zynga is a gaming company. Zynga's a lot more about data. Understanding social connections between people, understanding what game to surface up to you based on what you've done before, and if I understand your social network, I can service to you things that you're more likely to engage on and more monetize. So probably Zynga doing $5-6 million a day in revenue selling virtual goods, that's a data company, and one of the most exciting, most powerful ones. So that's very topical this week.
So what does Web 2.0 mean to you?
I think it's just a really great place for the world to see what's going on. I think it's hard to discover everything, and I think Web 2.0 lets you actually peel back the layers and really understand what's going on the big front and the small front, and how the world is being influenced in a big way. So I think of it as sort of like the world 2.0 instead of just Web 2.0.
Hard to say. Certainly, I'm one of the proponents on the mobile side that think that the web is actually going to come back into more of a central position, as it were, for delivering services. Right now, people think of mobile as an application space, but really the economics of the web, I think, can't be ignored, and I think they're going to drive into mobile in a very interesting way as we improve the tools. So we have people, for example, working on making the mobile web be just as feature-rich as something on the desktops have been. And when you get to that point, then if you're faced with publishing something to 10 million people at once versus publishing an app and having to wait for those people to update it, the economics start to get quite interesting. So we're watching that very carefully.
Well, Web 2.0, it's all about innovation, and I think that it's the innovation that's coming out since social has taken off so much is very unique and has opened up so many amazing opportunities for new companies. And Radium One's only 18 months old, but we've already grown rapidly because of the success of putting Web 2.0 technologies together. So for us, it's all about leveraging that and taking it to the next level.
For me, it always meant the sort of evolution beyond the static web page, right? To the place where a web browser could replace a desktop experience. And so it was a more alive sort of connection to things that happened all over the world, right? So it's sort of like the difference between, I don't want to sound like I'm being corporate and self-serving here, but Google Docs, the real strength of Google Docs is not that it's a great competitor from a feature perspective with Office, but that it's so good at allowing people to interact with each other in a real-time way on the same, sort of document or spreadsheet or whatever. And so, and that is sort of inherently what Web 2.0 is for me.
It's about the people. Web 2.0 is a community, and it's not only a community of faces you recognize, it's a spirit of collaboration and a culture of innovation. So whether it's Singapore or Mountain View, there's a unifying thread in the sense that we're all working together towards something common, this web for the people, by the people.
What trends are you seeing with products or companies that are focused on the creation, collection, and distribution of data?
Well, I think probably the most important thing to think about is implicit data rather than explicit data. It's there's obviously a lot of value created when people say, oh, I want to share this, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But there's a real revolution happening now in data that's collected implicitly. And it happens, it's always happened, every time you swipe a credit card, for instance, you're leaving a data trail. But now that we're actually carrying connected devices all the time, and those are devices that have enormous new senses that are collecting data, and that data is often being sent up to the cloud, there are all kinds of new applications possible.